what happened in the life of Jesus between his birth and his public ministry? Well, the Gospels largely leave that time period of Jesus' life unanswered. We don't know what he was like as a teenager or as a child. All we really get is a few glimpses in the Gospel of Luke, where as a child, Jesus leaves his family behind while they're in Jerusalem to go be in the temple, his father's house. And at the end of that, we read that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and knowledge before both man and God. So what would Jesus have been like if you would have seen him walking around the Israeli countryside as a child? Well, he would have looked just like any other Jewish kid of that time period. His human nature was just like ours, except that it was without sin. There was nothing unique about him when you looked at him. He had a fully human nature and a fully divine nature, but that divine nature was veiled by his human flesh. So the only thing that really would have stood out, it would have been his behavior, that he never sinned. So being his sibling probably wasn't very fun, because Jesus never really did anything wrong. But this doesn't mean that he didn't have to grow in knowledge and in wisdom. He had to learn how to walk. He had to learn how to talk. He had to learn as a human how to read, how to write, how to study the Bible, how to become a carpenter. All of those things in his human nature, Jesus had to learn. That's why he grew in wisdom and in knowledge, both in the sight of God and man. So the Gospels don't really address this time period of Jesus' life because it's not that important. The center of Jesus' mission is his public ministry, and the center of his public ministry is his death and his resurrection. That is why the Gospels zero in and focus on his public ministry and leave the rest to guesswork, because we don't need to know that. Now, there are some fake or pseudo-gospels out there that claim to know the secrets of what Jesus was like as a kid. These Gospels were written by heretical groups that tried to blend Greek Gnosticism with Christianity. And Greek Gnosticism rejects the physical. It views all things that are physical, like the human body, as evil and wrong. So they would affirm that Jesus was divine, but he only appeared to be human. He wasn't really human at all. So an example of this is the infancy gospel of Thomas. Now we know that these gospels were written in the 2nd century. They weren't written by the apostles. They weren't accepted by the early church. In fact, we have writings of the early church that says, hey, these are fakes. We don't believe these. This isn't, and they teach things, these pseudo-gospels teach things that are clearly not taught by the gospels in the Bible. For example, they teach that Jesus isn't the Messiah. Well, throughout the Gospels and the whole New Testament, Jesus is referred to as Jesus Christ, or Christ Jesus, and Christ is just the Greek word for Messiah, anointed one. So these other Gospels, they came later. They were written by non-Christians, heretical groups, and they teach things that are different than the Gospels that we have in the New Testament. And even the most ardent anti-Christian historians, they admit too that these are not reliable resources for the life of Christ. But the Gospels do tell us a little bit about that missing time period, but they tell us more about his public ministry, because that is what really matters, that he is fully God, fully man, and he came to die in the place of sinners, and he rose again in victory.